Joining me now is Rod McKenzie, Managing Director for Policy and Public Affairs at the Road Haulage Association. Mr. McKenzie, is your nightmare that on January the 1st, Kent, the Garden County of England, is turned into a car park?
That's certainly one of the nightmares that I've had, and I've had lots. I think that it's probably not going to be quite like that on the 1st. I think the peak time for road transport to move in January is sort of the middle of the month. Because remember, most people have had their sort of Christmas and New Year goodies delivered in December. So the first couple of weeks are quite quiet. So the government's lucky on that one. But I think it could get nasty later on. But I also think the queues may be further away from the ports rather than at the ports, because clearly what the government has been very worried about is those drone television shots of that you've described of Kent just turned into a gigantic car park. So what they've done is they've set up these so-called lorry parks in different parts of the country, places like Warrington, there's one in Birmingham, one in Kent, and there are several others, where lorries, if they haven't got the right paperwork, will be forced to park up until they've sorted it all out.
Now, is it right that in the first 6 months, even though we've left the European Union good and proper on December the 31st, Mr. McKenzie, that there is still almost a transition period in terms of haulage coming into Britain, so that the main checks will just be on alcohol, perhaps, and tobacco, but the bulk of checks will remain as they are now?
Yes. Effectively, what will change on the 1st of January is when we are exporting to the EU rather than the other way around.
The other way around,
so
yes.
We have got this kind of let-off period that you described for 6 months.
But your concern is that facilities that are supposed to have been built haven't been built, the IT technology is not in place, and you're still in the dark about how they're going to cope with this complex paperwork.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a absolute mountain of red tape. We've never had to, we haven't had to do this for 45 years or so. And there are really, really complex and stressful things that traders will have to fill in. Of course, the ideal solution is you find a customs agent who's an expert to do this stuff for you, and you obviously pay them, which adds to your cost. But the problem with that is there aren't enough customs agents. We estimate that there would need to be 50,000 customs agents to process all this paperwork. And by best guess is there are around about 8,000 in the UK at the moment. So we're well short of the figure.
Yes.
And those people are going to be incredibly overworked. And there's a very vicious, frankly, jobs market going on there at the moment, with people switching jobs, doubling their money, all sorts of counter offers going on, as you would expect. Is there a risk that it could get to a point where they just think, oh, to hell with this, customs officials just wave lorries through, which could then mean all sorts of illegal contraband coming into the country, maybe migrant stowaways on the back of lorries, because lorries aren't going to be checked, because if we're not ready for this huge influx of different red tape, that might be the only way they can keep the wheels moving. Well, I don't think they would be making that decision. That would have to be a decision, I would imagine, made by central government because of the pressure on them. But, normally customs officials are very kind of law-abiding on that front. So I don't think they'd be unilaterally doing that.
They might do it to turn a blind eye.
Well, yes, of course, that's always possible. But I think the government would be, if the supply chain was breaking down, the government would be under enormous pressure in the media, from the general public, from their own MPs and from the opposition to do something about it. Because, the last thing we need coming out of COVID and all the things that we know we're facing is, an economic disaster caused by a breakdown in the supply chain. One of the most efficient things about Britain is the logistics process. The fact that we get our stuff whether it's in our supermarket, or home deliveries or whatever it is, on time, more or less. And it's very regimented. It's very efficient. You get your parts for assembly in factories just at the right moment and all that. And if that breaks down, the economy's in real trouble. And we're in real trouble, and we'll notice the difference because we won't get our deliveries, and the shops and the supermarkets will start to look different. We won't run out of food, but there won't be the same amounts, and it's problematic.
I mean, nail biting stuff, isn't it?
It is, yes. It's very worrying, and I think everyone in business who's involved in international trade is very worried, and certainly international hauliers are very worried.
That's Rod McKenzie. He's Managing Director for Policy and Public Affairs at the Road Haulage Association.